After earning his trust and completing some of his special requests, the trader, Sutherland, offers a new set of conversations about his backstory as well as the opening of the final act of his tale. In our journey to find his brother Wyatt, we discovered strange details about the preppers and their end-of-the-world preparations. After finding the documents held by the stockpiler and trophy hunter, all that was left was to find the conspiracy theorist and their prepper cache. Before I continue, please don't forget to leave a like and a comment for the algorithm so I can keep making these videos.
Now there's one more bunker to check. The conspiracy nut. I'm not sure why Wyatt kept him around, but he did.
After exploring the conspiracy theorist's prepper cache, Sutherland doesn't really offer any insight on what you find. Instead, there is a new set of conversations that reveal a lot of new details about Sutherland's past. This is what he has to say after turning in document stash 3.
Nah, it's just been you on the radio. Did the wolves count? I got this story I tell myself, where everybody went. Maybe I'll share it. Maybe not.
Just like before, we are still the only person that Sutherland has heard on the radio. He even tells us that he has a theory for why it seems like everyone else is gone, but decides not to share it. I have my own theory for why this might be, but I will share this in a future video.
Born there, but I won't be dying there. Nope. I think everyone left. Or was that before? I saw folks on the shore, and I heard them over the water. But not for a while, I think. Oh, I hear other stuff, though. Not sure what or why it comes and goes.
We now know that Sutherland was born here in the Coastal Highway. We should remember, though, that some of the named regions in the game, including Coastal Highway, are just names designated for survival mode. I doubt that the islanders actually call this specific place Coastal Highway. When the characters in the game refer to the Coastal Highway, they could mean any place along the Great Bear Highway, which stretches across the coastline of Great Bear Island.
If the blizzard moved enough snow, you might be able to get in there. It passes through the mountain. After that, you'll find the highway. It follows the coastline. Follow the highway, and God willing, you'll get to Perseverance Mills.
So Sutherland was born somewhere along the highway, but knowing the backstory he reveals in a follow-up conversation, I think I know exactly where he was born. He makes it clear that he wasn't planning on dying on the Coastal Highway though. For some reason, he brings up the idea that everyone has left as a part of this conversation. He questions whether it happened before a specific moment, which I believe he is confusing for something else. If it wasn't obvious, Sutherland is suffering from memory problems. He is even displaying a few other symptoms that line up with the mysterious illness that has affected Great Bear Island on 2 different occasions. He has mentioned before that he can't keep his thoughts straight, which is why I believe he is talking about another time in history when people left Great Bear Island en masse. The collapse, or at least the years after, was a period when a mass exodus occurred. In this period of time, the only realistic way to get off of Great Bear Island was by boat. Being a resident of the Coastal Highway, he would have seen the many ferry ships leaving the island to help get desperate people to the mainland. There was even a buffer memory from the Coastal Highway region that shared a glimpse of this mass exodus. Once again though, Sutherland is showing us his memory problems in action. These details come out of nowhere and don't make sense here. The last line is also concerning and may be a result of his various memory-related issues. Finally, he did mention that he saw people on the shore and even heard them across the water. I have thoughts on this particular line and I will save it for a future video.
No chance I would make the crossing. It'd just be me and the fish. Nibbling on my toes till there's nothing left. Not a bad way to go. Better than a wolf's belly.
This conversation has made me and many people question how far away Great Bear Island is from the mainland. I believe that the inspiration for Great Bear Island was Vancouver Island on the British Columbia coast, but how far is this fictional island from the mainland if Sutherland's boat can't get across? It sounds like the island is dozens of kilometers away, making the waters too dangerous for such a small boat. In a previous video, I had mentioned that any person leaving the island by boat would have reached the mainland a long time ago. Judging from the boats we do see on Great Bear Island, there were no boats that could have made it safely. I was indeed incorrect with this statement. So where did everyone go? I've mentioned this twice now, but I have my thoughts on this particular question and I'm saving them for a future video.
I don't mind my boat. All that water. It's better this way.
I'm not sure why this conversation was even scripted and voiced. It just repeats and confirms that Sutherland really loves water. The previous conversation also confirms this based on the fact that he would rather die being eaten by fish than by a wolf. He has an obsession with water. If you watched my videos regarding the mysterious illness that has occurred twice on Great Bear Island, you will know that a strange fixation on water is the connection between the two instances of the illness and is one of the telltale signs that someone is suffering from it. Sutherland is without a doubt one of these people.
Old injury. Heavy cables came loose on our ship. Hit me like a bullwhip. Nearly took it clean off. Locks up on me in the winter. Or, was it after I came back? Wyatt was in a mood. Maybe that was it. Yeah, you see now? Do you get it? My brother. I think it was him. No.
This conversation starts off simple. We now know why Sutherland has a bad leg. Despite the injury from his fascination with boats, he continued living his life out on the water. A heavy cable is responsible for nearly ripping his leg off, which, depending on the size of the boat and the cable, could have done much worse than just rip off his leg. It sounds like the cold weather causes his bad leg to be nearly useless. Suddenly, this conversation takes a disturbing turn. Another confused thought occurs and suddenly Wyatt, Sutherland's brother, is responsible for what happened to his leg. I don't believe this for one bit. It is far more likely that the boating accident was the reason for this injury. The sudden turns in these conversations really are painting a picture of how fractured Sutherland's memory is. He was able to tell the story of the boating accident and his leg perfectly because it involved water, but the follow-up with Wyatt was a jumbled mess. Again, water is a key component of understanding this mysterious illness. The more and more these conversations go on, the more it seems like he is suffering from it. I would highly recommend you watch these 3 videos to fully understand everything regarding the 2 illnesses and their connection with water. They will be linked in the description.
They're kind of pretty, but the mind wanders a bit. Where is everyone? Can't they see the lights? Can't you? I see them in the water. The night sky, following me around or something. Like they've always been there. Or I have.
Once again, his thoughts turn to other people and where they went. For someone that prefers to be alone, he is showing more concern for other people than he should. He is also displaying a bit of paranoia in regards to the lights in the sky. He thinks they are following him. With the state of his mind, there is no doubt it is playing tricks on him and making him see or maybe even hear things that are not there. He certainly isn't well mentally.
Alone don't mean you're lonely. At least that's how I manage it. I got the wind, the water, and my wits. Don't I?
Alone doesn't mean you are lonely is a great way to put it when someone doesn't understand you. As a more introverted person, this line strikes a chord with me. Sutherland then explains how he has the wind, water, and his wits to help him get by. This statement is a lie though. Wits would mean he has a sharp mind, which he clearly doesn't. He questions himself when he ends this statement by saying, "Do I?" in the form of a question. No, Sutherland doesn't have the full range of wits he might have once had. All he has left is the wind and water. He seems to be just going with the flow. That's all he can do at this point in life.
No need, and I'm fine with it that way. It's a big enough island, ain't it? My boat's built for one. Me. Get the picture?
Even if his boat had room for 2 people, Sutherland still wouldn't share it. He is clearly a lone wolf and an introvert. He does not want to share his space with other people. He didn't even have a radio before the quiet apocalypse. He had to scrounge for and put one together to even communicate with us, which he is only doing because he wanted to find someone trustworthy to find his brother Wyatt.
So, I guess you heard of me. Our pa's place until he passed. And my brother never much liked it. Too out in the open, he always said. But I don't have any use for the place anymore. You're welcome to it. Out here, suits me just fine.
This is where my suspicions were confirmed. Sutherland's father is the misanthrope of this island. Once he passed, this made Sutherland the owner of the home. A misanthrope is a person that hates other people and society in general. This may indicate that when it came to the birth of Sutherland and Wyatt, it likely occurred inside the misanthrope's homestead. This would mean that doctors and maybe even midwives were out of the picture. Sutherland was very likely born within the misanthrope's homestead, meaning he would have been born within the coastal highway region. He explained that Wyatt never liked the place, which is why he would eventually find himself in the most remote corners of Great Bear Island building prepper caches. In this conversation, Sutherland officially granted the survivor character permission to use the homestead, not that it matters much after the world has ended.
Weather keeps me close to shore, yeah, but I manage. It's a tough little boat. I got no plans to leave it behind. Not anymore.
Here, we learn that the weather also prevents Sutherland's boat from going too far from the island. He doesn't have an issue with this though. He's made it clear as long as he is breathing and he is out on the water, he is happy to be alive.
Name an ocean and I've been there. North, south, wherever. Lots of us leave the island. Not many of us come back. I did.
Despite being a misanthrope, he is well traveled, especially on large ships that were likely filled with other people. This may indicate something vital about how he became afflicted with the mysterious illness plaguing Great Bear Island. If he is a seafarer, there is no way in hell he was in the Langston mine during Rudiger's project. There's no way he would be caught dead working in a mine. This likely means that Perseverance Mills is the source of his affliction. This really depends on how long the outbreak had been occurring before the start of the quiet apocalypse. We know that a quarantine was enacted before the first flare and that enough research was conducted by the Seraphim Sleep Research Center to create a cure, which likely meant this outbreak was allowed to persist for months. The actual length of the quarantine before the first flare is unknown. Considering the town had a docks suitable for Sutherland's boat, it is likely he was affected by the cause of this illness while visiting the area. We still don't know much about the Perseverance Mills version of this illness and if it functions exactly like the Langston Mine version. All we can do is speculate until Wintermute Episode 5 is released. To end things off, he mentions something that isn't well documented about the Islanders, and it is something that I have been wondering about. Even before the collapse, if an Islander left, would they come back? Before the collapse, Great Bear Island was already hurting from its own earthquake-induced industrial and economic collapse. With jobs dropping off the face of the island and a slow and steady population decline for several decades, would anyone come back after accepting off-island jobs? My guess is that most people would likely see returning to island life as unbearable. Sutherland was different though. Clearly, he had a life of solitude in his boat waiting for him, and he wasn't planning on leaving the boat behind.
That's my brother's old sloop. Small enough to tool around the coast, but wouldn't stand a chance in the open ocean. Oh, I would know. I've been out there before, in the big ships.
It turns out his boat actually belonged to Wyatt at one point. It was also known as a sloop, which is boat talk to describe the sails. I'm not a boat person, so you can look it up. The boat was small enough to enter shallow waters across the island. Despite describing it as a tough boat, it would not stand a chance in the open ocean. This again brings up the question about how far away is Great Bear Island from the mainland. With or without stormy weather, it sounded like the distance between the island and the mainland created ocean-like conditions. Sutherland knows what these conditions are like because he's been on large ships sailing across oceans.
What do you mean? I don't follow. You mean other than me? Huh. Looking for greener pastures, buddy?
This final conversation doesn't really offer much. Sutherland doesn't know where everyone went, and neither does the survivor character. Like I've said multiple times in this video, I have a theory about this and I will share it in a future video. As far as I can tell, that is it for the detailed conversations with Sutherland. I have not seen the end of Sutherland's tale as of the time of writing, so there may or may not be more. But what about the conspiracy theorist? What about the documents submitted? I don't know why, but it kinda just skips over the details. The third schematic mentions a meeting the preppers were going to have, which jogged Sutherland's memory. I think I would rather save that for the next part of the Sutherland's Tale series to avoid making this one any longer. I know that the tale kinda goes back and forth with the focus on the Tales quest and the backstory for Sutherland, but the next part of the tale marks what I would consider the final act. The next two videos are going to be very juicy in terms of lore and backstory for Sutherland, Wyatt, the preppers, and another name that should hopefully sound familiar. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and a comment for the algorithm so I can keep making them.